Welcome to Stillwater Chronicles. Tonight, we settle into a story about a woman who finished a painting, and the painting that was not yet finished with her. There is something about oil paint that takes a long time to dry. Not just the surface. The surface can seem dry within days, if the layer is thin enough. But underneath, deep in the body of the paint, the oils go on moving, slowly, almost imperceptibly, continuing to shift and settle long after the brush has been set down. Painters know this. They know that what looks finished is not always finished, that the surface can hold a kind of stillness that conceals a great deal of movement beneath. Sonja had always found this comforting. Tonight, she was not so sure. The studio was quiet, the way Berlin gets quiet in the deep part of the night. Not silent exactly, but hushed. The city's sounds were still there if you listened for them. A tram somewhere distant, the occasional car, the low press of wind against the north-facing skylights. But they were remote, far away, as if the world outside had agreed to keep its voice down. The studio occupied the top floor of a converted industrial building in Prenzlauer Berg. The ceilings were high, perhaps 5 meters, and the skylights ran nearly the full length of the north wall. Great panes of glass that, during the day, let in the diffuse, shadowless light that painters prefer. At night, they were black rectangles, reflecting back the room in fragments. Sonja had stopped looking at them. She stood in the center of the studio, barefoot on the cool concrete floor, a glass of wine held loosely in one hand. She was not painting tonight. She was looking. The canvas was large, almost life-sized, and it stood on her heaviest easel near the back wall, angled slightly toward the north light. She had started it 6 months ago. A woman seated in a red chair, a figure painting in the classical tradition, one source of light from the left, the body 3/4 turned, the face in 3/4 view. Nothing unusual in its composition, nothing that should have made Sonja stand still in the middle of her studio at nearly 1 in the morning, her wine warming in her hand, not quite able to make herself approach it. The model's name was Theresa. She had sat for Sonja 7 times over the course of 3 months. Long sessions, sometimes 4 or 5 hours. Theresa very still in the red chair, with the patience of someone who understood the work. They had not spoken much during the sittings. That was not unusual. Sonja preferred silence when she worked. And Theresa, she had said once, found something meditative in it. In being looked at so carefully, for so long, without being asked to perform or explain herself. The last sitting had been 3 months ago. Since then, Theresa had moved to Munich. A job or a person Sonja had not asked. She had continued the painting from memory. This was not unusual either. Sonja often worked this way, building up a likeness from life and then finishing it alone, in the way that felt most true. Memory, she believed, was more honest than observation. It kept only what mattered. It let go of the rest. But the painting had changed. Not in the ways she had changed it. Not in the glaze she had added to the shadow side of the face last Tuesday, or the small adjustment to the left hand she had made in a single concentrated session 2 weeks before. Those changes she remembered making. She had stood here, brush in hand, and made them deliberately, methodically, the way she always worked. The other changes she could not account for. It had started small. A week after Theresa's last sitting, Sonja had come into the studio one morning and stood before the canvas and felt that something was different. A feeling before a thought. The way you sense a room has been entered before you can say what has changed. She had looked for a long time. Eventually, she had decided it was the light. The morning sun came in at a different angle than the afternoon light she painted by. She had gone to make coffee and thought nothing more of it. But the feeling had returned and grown more specific. The following week she noticed that the figure's right hand, which she had painted resting flat on the arm of the red chair, palm down, fingers relaxed, was now turned slightly. Just slightly. The wrist rotated a degree or two, the fingers no longer flat, but slightly curled, as if the hand had begun, very slowly, to lift. Sonja had stood very still in front of the canvas for a long time. Then she had taken out her sketchbook and found her preliminary drawings of Theresa. Pencil studies from the first sitting. The hand in its original position. Palm flat. Fingers extended. She had compared them to the canvas. There was no question. The hand in the painting was not the hand she had drawn. She told herself she had repainted it without remembering. Artists did this, made adjustments in a kind of absorbed automatism, the conscious mind elsewhere while the hand continued to work. It was not unknown. It was, in fact, a state she actively sought. She had told herself this, and mostly believed it, and started a new layer over the hand the following morning, restoring it to its original position. 2 weeks later, the mouth had changed. Theresa's expression in the original composition had been neutral, composed, restful. The mouth settled into a kind of patient stillness. The mouth in the painting now was different. The lips were together, but the pressure had shifted. There was a quality to them that Sonja could not immediately name. She looked at it for a long time before she found the word. Held. As though the figure in the painting was holding something in. As though she had been about to speak for a very long time and had not yet decided whether to. Sonja repainted the mouth. The following week, she repainted it again. She had begun to take photographs. Every morning, before she touched the canvas, she photographed it, full frame and in detail, the face, the hands, the way the figure sat in the red chair. She kept the photographs on her phone in a folder she named, almost as a joke, evidence. She reviewed them each morning before she began. She compared yesterday's photograph to what was in front of her. For 2 weeks, nothing changed. The canvas looked exactly as it had looked in the photographs. Sonja had begun to relax, had started to think, with some embarrassment, that she had simply been tired, overworked, seeing things that were not there, in the way that tired minds will sometimes manufacture patterns from ordinary variation. And then, last Tuesday, she had opened her phone and held it beside the canvas and looked. In the photograph, the figure in the red chair was looking slightly to the left, the classic three-quarter view Sonja had established in the first week of the painting. The face was turned away from the viewer, by perhaps 30 degrees. The gaze directed toward some middle distance beyond the frame. The figure in the painting was looking directly at her, not almost directly, not slightly more toward the viewer than before. Directly. The eyes, which Sonja had painted with great care over several sessions, building up the irises in careful glazes of burnt sienna and raw umber, and a small amount of lead white, were looking straight out of the canvas, straight at whoever was standing in front of it, straight at Sonja. She had not slept well since then. She had called Theresa. The phone had rung 4 times and gone to voicemail. She had not left a message. What would she have said? She had instead spent 3 days telling herself that she had repainted the eyes herself in one of those absorbed states, and simply not remembered that the automatism she had theorized before had simply gone further this time, had made a larger change. Possible. Entirely possible. She was not a woman who frightened easily. She was, above most things, a rationalist. But she had not touched the painting since. And tonight, for reasons she had not entirely admitted to herself, she had come to the studio late, after dark, when the skylights were black, and the only light came from the work lamps she had angled toward the canvas. She stood in the center of the room and looked at the painting from a distance of perhaps 4 meters. The figure sat in the red chair. The red of the chair was deep and warm, cadmium red mixed with a little alizarin, grounded with transparent oxide, and it was the most alive color in the painting. Everything else was in a more restrained register. The gray-white wall behind, the warm shadow on the figure's right side, the cool reflected light from the left. The figure wore a dark blouse, loosely painted. The fabric suggested rather than described. The figure's left hand was in her lap, relaxed, closed. The right hand was on the arm of the chair. The right hand was in the wrong position again. Sonja looked at it. She held very still. The hand was not flat on the armrest. The fingers were raised, not dramatically, not in a way that would read as a gesture, but raised, lifted, as if the hand was in the middle of doing something, as if it had been set down or was about to be picked up. The wine glass in Sonja's hand was very still. She thought about Theresa. She thought about the 7 sittings, Theresa in the red chair, very patient, very still, the particular quality of her stillness. She had been a good model, in the way that the best models are good. Not merely motionless, but present. There was a difference. Motionless was a held breath. Present was something else, a quality of attention directed inward, as if the model had found some interior room and settled into it and was content to remain there while the painter worked. Theresa had had that quality. It was, Sonja had thought at the time, what she was really painting. Not the blouse, not the hands, not the exact color of the red chair. She was painting that quality of presence, that interior stillness. She was only now considering what it might mean if that presence had remained. She walked toward the canvas, slowly, the way you walk in a room where something is sleeping, and you are not entirely sure you want to wake it. The concrete floor was cool under her bare feet. The smell of oil paint and turpentine was stronger here. That deep, complex smell that Sonja had always loved, that she associated with work and concentration, and the particular satisfaction of a long session in which something true had been made. Tonight, the smell was simply present, and she was not sure what she felt about it. She stopped 2 feet from the canvas. She looked at the face. The eyes were looking at her. She had known they would be, but knowing had not prepared her for the experience of it, for the specific quality of being regarded by something she had made. The irises she had painted so carefully, layer by layer, were catching the light from the work lamp in a way that made them seem not wet exactly, but alive in the way that eyes are alive. There was depth in them, the depth she had put there deliberately, with the glazes, building up transparency and warmth. She looked at the eyes for a long time. She was a painter. She had spent decades learning to see, really see, to look past the name of a thing to its actual visual fact. And the visual fact of these eyes was that they were paint on a linen support, carefully applied, and the light was catching them at an angle that produced the illusion of depth and attention. She believed this. She looked away. When she looked back, the figure's head had turned, or the figure's head had not turned. The figure was paint on linen. Paint on linen did not move, but when she looked back, the face was in profile. Not quite in profile. Almost. 3/4 turned away, as it had been in the original composition, as she had painted it in the beginning, as it was in the photograph on her phone. Sonja stood very still. She thought, I looked away. When you look away from a painting and look back, your eye can settle in a different place, can read the composition differently. The same image can feel shifted. This was well documented. This was the nature of optical experience. She thought, I looked away. She set her wine glass down on the work table beside her. She picked up her phone. She opened the folder she had named Evidence and found the photograph from this morning. The face in 3/4 view, looking toward that middle distance. She held the phone beside the painting and looked from one to the other. The painting matched the photograph. 3/4 view. Gaze directed away. The same as it had always been. The same as it was this morning. The right hand flat on the armrest. The fingers relaxed and extended. Sonja looked at the right hand for a long moment. She put her phone in her pocket. She thought about the oils, how long they took to dry, really dry, all the way through, how the surface could hold a stillness that concealed movement beneath, how what looked finished was not always finished, how the paint went on, moving, slowly, long after the brush had been set down. She thought about the word she had found for the mouth, held, as if the figure had been about to speak for a very long time and had not yet decided whether to. She thought about Theresa, the interior room, the quality of presence that the best models carried with them into the sitting, and that the best paintings, if you were lucky, if you had done something true, managed to hold. She looked at the painting for a long time, and the painting looked at whatever it was looking at, and the studio was very quiet, and the skylights above were black mirrors, and somewhere outside the city kept its distance. She did not paint tonight. She turned off the work lamp and stood in the dark for a moment, the canvas invisible now, just a large pale rectangle in the dimness. She picked up her wine glass, She walked to the door. She paused at the threshold. She did not look back. She was fairly certain, she was almost entirely certain, that if she looked back, the figure in the painting would be in exactly the position she had left it. Three-quarter view. Face turned away. The gaze directed toward some middle distance beyond the frame. Because paint did not move. Because she was a rationalist. Because there was an explanation for everything she had seen and forgotten and seen again. And the explanation was a simple one, and she believed it. She turned off the light. She left the studio. She did not look back. But in the morning, before she did anything else, before she made coffee or opened her phone or let herself look at the canvas, she found her sketchbook. She found the preliminary drawings from the first sitting. She found the study of the face. She held it in both hands and looked at it for a long time. Theresa, in the pencil sketch, was looking slightly to the left. Her expression was neutral. Her mouth was closed, lips soft, slightly parted, not held, not waiting. She set the sketchbook down carefully, the way you set down something you are not ready to think about yet. She made coffee. She let it cool. She stood at the window and looked out at the city for a very long time. She did not go back to the studio. Not that morning. Thank you for listening to Stillwater Chronicles, where even the things we make can hold more of us than we intended. If the stillness stayed with you, if the smell of oil paint and old buildings settled somewhere quiet, then let it remain a little while longer. Some paintings, after all, were never meant to be finished. They were only ever meant to look back. Rest now, the canvas will wait.